A new stunning report reveals China's latest propaganda push in the Xinjiang region, where tens of thousands of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities have been forced into so-called re-education camps. The New York Times and ProPublica analyzed thousands of videos published on Twitter and YouTube, appearing to show Beijing's version of life across the region. Now, Uyghur Muslims and other ethnic minorities are seen praising the Chinese government and claiming life is great in Xinjiang, despite global accusations of genocide, forced labor, and human rights abuses. The Times and ProPublica found many of these people use the exact same phrases and overall messaging in the videos, raising questions about their authenticity.
我是一个土生土长的维吾尔族小姑娘。
我是一个土生土长的新疆人。
是一个土生土长的新疆吐鲁番人。
我是一个土生土长的新疆其他人。
我是土生土长的新疆人。
网上看到蓬佩奥说了一些，对新疆的维吾尔族人权这个不当言论，我们特别生气。
This propaganda appears to indicate that China could be trying to rewrite history and spread false narratives about life in Xinjiang. So ProPublica journalist Jeff Cao co-authored the report, and he's with me now to talk more about this. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. So I think what kind of struck me about these videos is, even though I couldn't understand the language, is the delivery appeared to be so casual, and it really kind of sounds authentic until I read the breakdown in the article about what they're saying and how they're using these repetitive phrases and very distinctive phrases. So let's sort of start in the beginning. Tell us, when did these videos start popping up? When did you all start to realize, oh, this isn't organic? And take us through your investigation to kind of piece together this very organized attempt at propaganda.
Sure, and thanks so much, Anne-Marie, for having me to talk about this story. So this actually started around mid-January. On January 19th, Mike Pompeo, the then Secretary of State, basically issued this declaration from the State Department that there was a genocide going on in Xinjiang. And what happened was, we didn't know it at the time, but their government quickly mobilized essentially this counter-messaging campaign. And we started noticing these videos posted to YouTube and Twitter in late January, about a week or so after this campaign started. And like you said, the first time you look at one of these videos, it's sort of low production value, right? It's a person at home taking a selfie and talking to the camera. And it's only when you sort of take all these videos as a whole, we downloaded thousands of them and compared their content to each other that we realized that there was a coordinated campaign going on. So we found these videos, on YouTube and Twitter. We also found this Chinese social media platform that had been housing a lot of these videos. And we found that, a video would be posted to the Chinese platform, and then maybe a week later, within 30 minutes, 3 or 4 Twitter and YouTube accounts would post them in coordination. So that was really clear evidence that, one video would be posted, and then a lot of other accounts that seemingly had nothing to do with each other would also immediately post duplicate videos. Through reporting, we found that these were indeed organized by the propaganda department locally. We found documents basically organizing these speaking out campaigns to counter the United States and other countries' assertions of genocide.
So, it's one thing to say, hey, all of these videos, people seem to be saying the same thing. It's a little uncanny to be, sort of organic. But you actually tracked somebody down in one of these videos and spoke to that person. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so this is the boss of a used car dealership in one of Xinjiang's counties. And obviously in some of these videos, there's going to be information that we can use to piece together to find who's actually posting them. or who's actually appearing in them. Obviously, the government was posting when we found out. And we called him, and I think for a lot of people within China living under the regime, being asked, in a way that it's hard to refuse to do something for the propaganda department isn't a big deal, and it's sort of not a huge secret. And so he essentially said, "Hey, this official put me up to it, and here's his phone number if you have any questions." I didn't really know what was going on, but you can call him. We called the propaganda official a few times, but we never got a response.
What's the significance of these being posted on sites like Twitter and YouTube? These are not Chinese sites. So clearly the audience is not a domestic audience, right? They're trying to influence the rest of the world. I thought to myself, oh, they must be concerned about the way Beijing is appearing on the world stage in regards to the Uyghurs, or else why would they do this?
Yeah, they are very much concerned, and I think the coordinated internet campaign to spread these videos is only one part of this very broad push, by diplomats, through economic power and other means to sort of counter these accusations and make China look better on the world stage. It's really concerning, I think, that they're using sites like YouTube and Twitter. Obviously, these platforms are banned in China. There's a fear by the Chinese government that people might use these platforms to spread political messaging, but at the same time, they've exploited these Western platforms to send their message to the rest of the world. So it's quite concerning. We've even seen, after we found these videos, we saw other influencers, for example, on YouTube and TikTok, they would take these original videos, compile them into sort of remixed content, and use them to make arguments that there are no human rights abuses in Xinjiang. And that's really concerning because, it sort of launders the original provenance, of these videos, right? It took us months of research and analysis to figure out, okay, there's a broader, propaganda campaign behind this. But if you're to stumble upon one of these influencers' videos, you might be, convinced, reasonably convinced that, these videos were authentic, and that's very concerning.
Yeah, and you guys point out how they sort of, when the link to the videos, they sort of add extra characters at the end so they can do an end run around the algorithms that Twitter and YouTube may have to identify inauthentic posts. Still, these platforms should be pretty proactive and it didn't seem like it was a very difficult way to get around or a very challenging, maneuver that they did, but they were able to do it. So I'm surprised that Twitter and YouTube have not picked up on this. And I'd love to go down that road, but we're running out of time. So this is what I really want you to talk about is, what is life really like for Uyghurs in this region? One of the people that you spoke to was a grandmother who is living in exile, and her two granddaughters are part of this whole propaganda thing, right? They have a video out, and in looking at the picture of them as they're shopping in a mall, I got to admit, I thought if I didn't know the whole context, I would think life looks okay. So what's life really like?
Yeah, so it is a very incredibly terrible human rights situation for the Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in Xinjiang. The United States, like I said, in January applied the genocide label, and the UK, Canadian, Dutch parliaments have applied similar labels. At the end of the day, genocide, there's sort of a legal definition for it, and we can sort of argue over the nuances, but I think, the reporting has shown, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions have been sent to these re-education camps, basically converting people, taking their culture and religion away, try to convert them to sort of assimilate into broader Chinese culture. There's been reports of torture and forced labor, forced sterilization, sexual assault inside these camps. And we see evidence of this as well. Recent sort of demographic reports out of Xinjiang have shown this plummeting birth rate for the Muslim minorities in the last few years. And so, whether it meets the legal definition of genocide or not, I think it's almost a moot question because, there are just so many concerning reports that we're hearing and that the Chinese government is trying to paper over.
All right, Jeff Cao, it's a great investigation. The way it is presented, I encourage people to head over to the websites because the way it's presented really sort of brings to life why this is an important story. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie.